Hello and welcome to the Southern Star's Coronavirus podcast. I'm the news editor, Siobhan Cronin.
And I'm the digital manager, Jack McCarran.
Every week we will be talking to people at the centre of this crisis in West Cork and beyond. We will also be taking a look at that week's Southern Star and how our reporters across the region are covering the pandemic. In this week's podcast, we talk to Skibbereen native Emer Downing, who has been living in Bergamo in northern Italy for the past 8 years. She has been in lockdown for several weeks and tells us what life is like for her. But first, let's discuss this week's newspaper.
Yeah, and Siobhan, for me there's only one place to start this week, and that's with the dramatic picture on page 1 of the testing centre at Randallogue's GAA grounds. And I think it really brings into focus the scale of this crisis, and the story that accompanies it by Jackie Keogh really highlights the enormous pressure our frontline workers are under with the lack of testing equipment, the lack of the essential protective gear. It just really kind of brings to the forefront of our minds where we're at in terms of battling this crisis.
Yeah, Jack, we have a really large picture there on the front page this week of the new testing centre in Dunmanway. It was actually moved there last week just for privacy reasons. They decided to get a better location, so it's at the GAA grounds in Ballynacarga now, and the picture is of the staff there talking to a motorist who's pulled up, and they're clad, of course, in their gowns and their gloves. But the story does say that there are fears that they're running out of some of the high quality face masks that they need, obviously, if they're going to be in contact with some people who are suspected of having COVID-19. And when we went to press there on Wednesday night, the latest figures were, quite shocking, really. We're up to 3,447 cases confirmed in the country, and 255 of those are within County Cork. Now, they don't give more detailed locations for various reasons. They don't want, areas to be singled out, and they also don't want people who are not in areas where there are clusters to feel like they're any safer. So I think there's a very good reason there for, keeping the locations fairly quiet. So I mean that kicks off our coronavirus coverage really, which for the last month, 5 weeks now, we've had 6, 7, 8 pages of it in the paper, but there's just no getting away from it at the moment, I suppose.
Yeah, and I just kind of, something else that jumps out at me just from looking at that picture, and I always love a big picture on the front page, and especially one that's so striking. It just kind of reminds people that these frontline workers are standing out there in the cold, essentially. Like, I know we've had nice weather this week, but when you look at that picture, their arms are exposed and they're standing there for 8-9 hours a day testing people over and over and over. And it's just like, all you can do is show them the respect that they have been getting and they deserve. But it really makes you not worry for them so much, but just think about everything that they've been doing under the most extreme circumstances.
Yeah, I think so. And we had an interview last week with a nurse, and what kind of struck me was she was saying, look, don't call us heroes. We're not heroes. We're just doing our job. I'd rather be at home with my kids, but we're just getting on with it. So I think, that's worth bearing in mind. To us, they're heroes, but to them, they're just doing the job they were trained to do.
Yeah, and another story on page 1 of this week's Southern Star is one that pops up probably every year, and that's the burning of scrub and gorse in West Cork. And the burning of scrub and gorse, for better or worse, is part and parcel of life in rural Ireland, and in particular West Cork. But considering the times that we're living in, it really does seem to be hugely irresponsible of landowners if they're doing it purposely on their land, Siobhan, because it's mentioned in Jackie's story that all 5 of the West Cork fire stations had to be called out over the past week to deal with gorse fires, when there is so much more critical jobs that they're needed for at the minute.
That's right, yeah. This is a story now for the last few years in particular. I've noticed is really hitting the headlines from around now on, really, once the weather starts to pick up. And we've had unusually dry weather, I think, for the last 4 or 5 days. There's certainly been no rain in the Skibbereen area. I haven't got beyond that. But they're saying that that's really what kicked it off last Thursday. Down around, I think, Burris in particular and Beara were particularly badly hit by these gorse fires. And again, you can never say for certain what starts them. They do feel that it is a landowner's burning scrubland, but Claire Herdman now, who'd be a pretty high profile park ranger in Glengariff, went onto social media because she was so annoyed about it, just making the point that, look, it is completely illegal at the moment within this time period to burn it in the first place. But now of all years, we need our emergency service guys there available to us, for COVID-19 duties. So please, she's just pleaded to people, please don't do that at the moment. And also the fire service have been posting on social media with the same urging. So, it is really a message that really does need to go out there at the moment of all years.
And there is just one great line in that story which highlights the spirit that we all admire so much of our fire services, in that they rang O'Keefe's SuperValue in Bantry while they were working on the fires to order 35 breakfast rolls to feed 28 hungry firemen. So despite the serious nature of the story, there's also some lightness there too. And Siobhan, the last story on this week's front page of the Southern Star revolves around the grounding of our air ambulance.
Yes, and no matter what story we have at the moment, they all seem to have a COVID-19 link. And we've been running this story now for the last, maybe 2 months, about the danger that this was going to happen, that the air ambulance, which was only launched there in July 2019, that it was, for lack of funds, going to be in trouble. And so I think actually from this week now, it's going to be grounded. They couldn't get the funding they were looking for it to keep it going. They launched a very high-profile public campaign there about 2 months ago to try and get the public on board to give them some funds, which they did, but just not enough. So from this week now, that vital helicopter, which has been, it's done 351 missions since it started, bringing people from outlying areas to hospitals, and now of all times you'd be wondering, when there is money becoming available for the health service, why this hasn't been included in that. Really, you'd imagine that this would be a really good extra arm to have, in our arsenal, at the moment. So unfortunately, that's grounded.
Yeah, well, that's this week's front page, and we're going to move on and hear from Emer Downing over in Bergamo in just a few minutes, but we might just touch on a few more stories briefly that people can read inside this week's Southern Star. And I think, Siobhan, one you wanted to draw attention to was the 50th wedding anniversary of Anne and Dennis McCarty. It's quite a sad story. Obviously, a lot of stories like this have been told around this time, but there is also something nice about the strength of the human spirit here as well.
There are actually quite a lot. I mean, the front page stories are a little bit, I suppose, downbeat at the moment, but there's an awful lot of really nice stories inside of people just battling against, the restrictions. And Dennis McCarty and his wife Anne celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary this week at Fairfield Nursing Home. Jackie Keogh has a lovely story there. She spoke to their daughter, and the picture kind of tells it all. Dennis is standing outside the window, Anna's in bed inside, and she has a lovely birthday cake there on the bed, which was made by one of the staff at the hospital. And it just shows, I suppose, that despite everything, people are finding ways around it and finding ways of making contact. And as the daughter said, although they couldn't be together, they thought it was wonderful. They waved and they blew kisses to one another. Now, her father has Alzheimer's, and she said it was kind of difficult to explain to him why he couldn't be with his wife. She said, Dad doesn't fully understand why he's not allowed to see Mum, but we're meeting that with patience and a lot of tenderness, which I think is a beautiful quote.
It is. It is a lovely story in many ways. And Siobhan, just one more we might touch on then. There's a special feature in this week's Southern Star, and it's binge-worthy box sets. Staff in the Southern Star were asked to put up 2 of their favourite film series or television series that they could recommend to Southern Star readers. And there's a 2-page spread which hopefully people will be able to take some TV watching inspiration from. But I think you made an interesting point when this was being compiled, that the suggestions people put forward told a lot about their character, didn't it?
Well, I think that may be true. Myself, my own favourite pick was Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I think is a great way to escape what's going on at the minute. It's absolutely insanely, ridiculously funny. And I noticed our managing director has got on the Tiger King bandwagon. It's number one in the charts at the moment for downloads. And our editor is showing his love of football with his World Cup finals 1970 option. And I think yourself, Jack, one that I hadn't heard of, but after reading it, I really want to get down and have a look at it. BoJack Horseman. Tell us about
that. Well, BoJack Horseman, it's just finished up actually this year. So there's 6 or 7 series, but I've been following it from the start, and it's an absurd Netflix original about a former sitcom star attempting a comeback while also dealing with addiction and depression. But the caveat is it's an animated show about a horseman, hence the name BoJack Horseman. So it's in an alternative world where humans and animals are all into one. So horses are almost they're like humans, but they're almost a different race to humans. So they have their differences, but they work together, etc. And every animal is represented, and that might turn people off, the idea that it's about animatronic, I can't even say the word, animals living side by side. But the themes it touches on are really powerful, and I said in the piece, it's a really great representation of all kind of the darker sides of the humankind, like depression, anxiety, addiction, sexuality, sexism. Everything is touched on, and it's based in Hollywood, as I say. So the Me Too movement plays a big part, especially in the final few seasons. So there's all that and much more in this week's Southern Star, and it's in shops across West Cork and beyond right now. But if you can't get to a shop, you can also buy the digital edition. Just log on to www.thesouthernstar.ie/e-paper, and you'll be able to read the Southern Star on your tablet, your phone, your desktop, or your laptop. And if you actually prefer the physical copy, which I do personally, we can deliver it to your front door. So you can get a Southern Star postal subscription. All you have to do is call 028 212 00. And just to give some context as to how quick you're going to get it, I have had to quarantine myself in County Limerick. So I usually live in Skibbereen, but for the last 2 weeks I've been in Limerick, and I still wanted to get my Southern Star, naturally enough, and it was delivered to my door at 9 o'clock today when we're recording. So that's Friday morning, so you're only going to be 24 hours later than everyone else, and you'll get the full Southern Star delivered to your door. So as I said, if you want that, just call 028 212 00 and we'll organise a postal subscription for you. But now, coming up after this break, we're going to talk to Emer Downing over in Bergamo.
So Emer Downing, you're originally from Skibbereen. You're now living in Bergamo for almost 8 years. So just describe Bergamo to the listeners and what it was like in the days before COVID-19.
Yeah, that's it, Siobhan. So Bergamo is a lovely little city. It's about the same population as Cork. It has 2 parts. So there's a medieval part up on a hill, and there's the sort of newer part of the city, which is down lower in the valley. And it's a relatively quiet city. There's not a huge amount to do, but we do have lots of tourists that come. It's a nice place to spend a day or two. There's lots of lovely historical things to see, and we have the lakes just down the road from us as well. So it's a really nice little city.
A very pretty location, it sounds. And how long now have you been in lockdown, and how are things going this week?
So on full lockdown, I've been at home for 3 weeks now. Actually, no, 4 weeks now that I think of it. For 3 weeks, I haven't left my house. I had some allergies and was coughing and sneezing quite a lot the last while. So my boyfriend's been doing the shopping. So I have literally stayed at home and haven't been out the front door. I've been off school. I'm a primary school teacher, and we've been off school now for 6 weeks. So we just finished our 6th week of remote learning.
Right. So we're not really strictly off, though, because you are doing some work online with the kids. Is it still a very traditional day, or is it like a minimized day, we'll say?
That's right. Yeah, I wouldn't say we're off at all. It's very full on. It's very different to a normal day. We have a video chat in the morning with all of the children. Then they have an optional one later in the day where they can ask us questions if they need to. All work is set on Google Classroom, so we are able to share things with them through that, and then they submit assignments online. We're being quite flexible about when they can hand things in. And then in the afternoon, we have another Google Hangout session with the kids so that we can just see how the day went. Maybe we'll do a show and tell session or share how we're feeling. And we've been doing some guided reading sessions as well in small groups. So that's been really lovely to read some books together.
And how are the kids coping with this, Emer?
They're doing okay. I'm definitely hearing complaints of being bored. That's their main problem, more than the fear of the big thing. Particularly this week, the complaints of boredom have been going on. They also had their half term, their midterm, just before we closed down the schools. So they've now been at home for 7 weeks, and they're finding it hard.
Right, okay. And now you wrote a lovely piece for us about 2 weeks ago about life in Bergamo, and you mentioned a doctor who he was very annoyed that the young people weren't really taking the threat seriously, he thought. Now that was 2 to 3 weeks ago. So has that changed? Have people started taking things a bit more seriously?
Yeah, as I say, we're on complete lockdown now, so that's just not happening anymore. The police have really, really clamped down on getting people into trouble if they are out and about. You have to have documentation to leave your house, and if you don't have that, you could get a fine, or you'll get in trouble in another way with the police. So I think that has been working, and I've seen that that's been happening in Ireland too.
And tell me now, like we're seeing very dramatic pictures. There was a very good documentary on Sky called Into the Red Zone, where they showed the real pressure that the doctors and nurses are under, especially in the smaller hospitals in Bergamo. And you're probably at a stage now where I'd imagine most people know somebody who has passed away from this. Is that the stage where you'd be at now?
Yeah, absolutely. We were quite lucky that for the first week or two we hadn't heard of much, but then as time goes on, it starts to be mostly elderly relations with people, friends, fathers, things like that. It's really, really hard.
And funerals, of course, there's probably nobody attending them at all. I mean, the numbers are restricted in Ireland, but I think in Italy, am I right in saying there's nobody attending them?
That's correct. If somebody dies, you stay at home and you mourn alone, unfortunately.
Right. Now, you mentioned there about the children, beginning to get a little bit angsty after 7 weeks. How are the adults faring? Are you finding you've kind of fallen into a bit of a routine now, or are you still itching to get out into the air?
I think I'm getting more used to the routine and how to manage my time. There are definitely benefits. Like I can work with my pajama bottoms and my slippers still on, and nobody knows any different. There are some lovely benefits to being at home, but I think I was very resentful at the start about losing out on going out for a cycle or a walk and fresh air. And then I was hit with all of these allergies and I had a bit of a cold and I was feeling really awful and I wasn't able to go out. And I think that took away the bitterness. Like I lost the real grow for going outside. I just kind of went, okay, I'm okay with staying indoors and cuddling up and snuggling in and keeping warm.
And I don't know if it's the same in Italy, but over here, everybody seems to feel that they may have had it, or they're going, that they might have the more mild symptoms. If you have a sniffle or a cough, are people quite paranoid there now if they have a little cough, or they just feel a bit
Absolutely.
under the weather?
No, everybody, as soon as you think you have something, everybody's checking their temperature. Like I say, when I was feeling unwell a few weeks back, I rang their version of South Doc in Bergamo, and they said what I had just sounds like allergies and allergic asthma. They weren't too concerned, but they said keep checking my temperature twice a day, and if anything changes, to ring them immediately.
Right. And are you finding anything is in short supply now? I mean, even the likes of thermometers, are they still easy to get? Or how about face masks or
Yeah,
even food
thermometers
supplies?
were fine. I think you can still get gloves. We'll find out today because we're all out. And masks are an absolute no-no. There's absolutely no way of getting a face mask in this country at the moment, unless
And
you're a health
is there any
professional. You'll have it at work, but nobody else at home can get one.
Okay, because there's a big debate here now at the moment, and in America as well, I see, about the value of face masks. I think the Czech Republic seems to feel that they have had a very good result in asking everyone to wear them, and that also, if you don't have a surgical one, to make your own. Are people making their own masks over there?
From what I can see, no. Like I say, I haven't been out myself in a while, but my boyfriend said that when he was at the supermarket the last couple of weeks, that people were either wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. So not everybody had a mask, but there weren't any homemade masks.
Okay. And now, as well as that, Emer, you had plans to get married at the start of June in Bergamo. So what is the situation with that now?
Yeah, so that was a hard decision to make, but we decided to postpone our wedding until next year. It was hard to know when to do it because obviously nobody knows how long this is going on for, and we've heard lots of predictions that are very far in the future about when we can leave our houses. But again, none of this is set in stone. So yeah, we've made the decision just to leave it another year, reset, and let people rebook their flights, and we'll do it properly and celebrate twice as hard when this is all over.
Great. And what, apart from getting married, what would be the next thing you'd like to really do when everything does get back to normal? What's the thing you're most looking forward to?
I absolutely cannot wait to go for a cycle along my favorite cycle path along the river. It's killing me not doing it. I really, really can't wait for that.
And maybe a visit to West Cork might be thrown into at some stage.
Of course, yeah. I already have flights booked for the end of the summer, so I'm really hoping that maybe I'll still be able to go in August, but we'll see how things are. But yeah, definitely can't wait to get back to West Cork.
Okay, thanks, Emer. Thanks for talking to us, and stay safe.
Thanks a million, Siobhan.
Thanks for listening to the Southern Star Coronavirus Podcast. We'll be back at the same time next week. If you enjoyed this show, please make sure to rate, review and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Acast, Stitcher or wherever else you listen to the show.